I know you texted it, but thank you. I'm sorry, I left my paper at home. How dare you?
July 12th?
Saying the word email? Really? Really? I'll be able to pull it up. We're up and running now, so. No, that's okay. This will be just fine as soon as I can.
Well, I am flattered, Jenny, but I'm not Richard.
Yeah, you guys aren't those people, but Curly and Tim goes to council and obviously has a change there.
I think very highly of it, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honored to be mistaken for Rob.
Oh, Rob, okay.
Are we streaming yet, by the way? We are. Okay. Hi, everybody. We'll be ready in just a minute.
I am not Dr. Hartford, so. Gary, I know you were confused. I get it.
Let me know when you have what you've got, what you need.
Thank you.
Are we ready? Everybody got what they need? Good evening and welcome. We are glad to have you all join us for our July meeting. We will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. We'll ask our veterans to come forward to lead us in the pledge.
Present arms. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, if you'll please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you all very much. Before we move on with our minutes approval, I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda with 2 items for our resolution for Garrett's and Meg's. I have been unable to have conversation with Gary and Meg while they have been traveling, so they're not present to be able to be recognized. We do want to celebrate the 35th anniversary of Garrett's and Meg's in downtown Radford, but we want to do that when Gary and Meg are able to be here, so I would ask that we delay that to our August meeting. And we also need to gain some additional information on the American Legion building project. So we would like to delay that to August as well. So I'd like to make a motion that we move those 2 items to our August meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Council members, you have the minutes from the June 28th meeting. Are there any amendments to those minutes, or do we have a motion to approve as submitted?
Yeah, we got to make a motion to allow
That's true.
Jesse to come in. Thank you.
So do we have a motion to allow Ms. Foster to participate remotely?
So moved.
We have a motion to allow Ms. Foster to participate remotely. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Jesse, you can now participate.
Does she need to say why?
Yeah, she needs to tell us.
Can you state where you are and why you're participating remotely?
Yes, Nag said I'm on vacation with my husband.
Okay, thank you. Council members, you have the minutes from June 28th. Are there any amendments, or do we make a motion to approve as submitted?
I sent 2 corrected typos to Jenny, but that's it for me.
And they were just typos. I
Yes.
can tell you what they are. They were-
I can. It was seconded was misspelled on page 2, and Isabella Calfee was misspelled on page 3.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. At this time, we'd like to open the floor for citizen comments. If you have something to make a statement for this evening for the public matters, please come down, state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please use the podium with the microphone. Seeing no one rushing at breakneck speed for the podium, we will close the citizens' comment portion of the meeting, and we will move along with new business. Council members, you have a resolution for the deed of transfer from the EDA for the Triangle Plaza on West Main Street at 330. Council members, do we have a motion to approve the transfer from the EDA to the City of Radford?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Jenny, did we get any additional nominations for our appointments to boards and commissions?
You did not, I sent in the packet, the Agency on Aging, Tina King sent an email stating about the current representatives, and then there was a new addition, Flo Graham resigned from the EDA, and Keith Wilkins has put his name in for that.
Okay.
Besides that, nobody seemed interested.
Council members, did you have anyone else for Library Board, Beautification, Tourism, City University Joint Commission, or New River Resource Authority?
I have not gotten any additional names my direction.
Likewise. No, me neither.
Okay, well then, what I would make a recommendation that we do is we go ahead and make the consideration for the Agency on Aging representative and alternate, and then also for Keith Weltons to be nominated for a seat for the Economic Development Authority. I'd like to make a motion that we continue with our two representatives with Agency on Aging, and that Keith Welton serve as the EDA representative. Do we have a second?
I'll
Sec-
Yeah, go
Sorry.
ahead. I was just going to say in support of, I appreciated the response on the Agency on Aging about providing some, looking for special locations for the additional two
Yeah.
candidates that we had, and providing them an opportunity to get acquainted with the agency. That looks like a very good compromise solution with something that I know that we're all grappling with.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We are now moving into Appropriation Ordinance Central. So we can look at these appropriations for the Department of Social Services as a consent agenda item, unless someone would like us to act individually on these. Let me read what they are first, and then we can make that consideration should we choose to. The Department of Social Services has received additional funding in the amount of $83,879. All these appropriations, Appropriation Ordinance 1749.01 through 1749.07, will amend their budget to support DASS staff costs. They include Title 4E Prevention Services, Chafee Independent Living COVID expenses, DSS Administrative Staff and Operations, Adult Protective Services under COVID, Medicare expansion, Chafee Education and Training voucher, and COVID for Virginia Department of Housing Grant number 5. So these items all would total about $83,879. Appropriation Ordinance 1749.03 requires $2,914 local match, which they can accommodate within their budget. Council members, what's your pleasure?
I recommend approving them as a collective versus individual.
So we have a motion to approve appropriation ordinances 1749.01 through 1749.07 as a consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve those items as consent agenda. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having heard 4 affirmative votes, we can dispense with a second reading if so desired. Do we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion to dispense with a second reading for appropriation ordinances 1749.01 through 1749.07. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We got you taken care of. Thank you very much. Next, we have our appropriation ordinance 1749.08, our West Main sidewalks. This project has been on the agenda for a couple of years. We finally were able to work it into the budget this past year, and we are looking to replace 1,700 feet of sidewalk along West Main Street as our West project, West End Street treatments. We are looking at paving, we've improved lighting, and we're working at the sidewalks as well. One of the big components of this is the sidewalks will be wider. They will also be ADA compliant with ramps at each of the 4 intersections. The price of this project is a little bit higher than we initially thought it would be, but we are looking to move forward with it regardless. The total piece to remove the old sidewalk, traffic control, labor, equipment, materials is $166,830. David, do you have anything you'd like to talk about with it?
An extensive project. This does include removal of all the sidewalks that's there now, the staking. It includes, as you mentioned, the 5 foot in width, which will be wider width than what's there now. It will also include, it's got a mesh fiber in it, so the sidewalks will last a very, very long time. It includes all the traffic control, and it includes the ADA accessible, and that's the biggest expense. That's about $20,000 of it is the new requirement, which is like the ones you see in front of Food City. So it's turnkey. They anticipate that they could start in just a couple of weeks, so this project will be underway and probably done by mid to late August, something like that, so we'll get it done pretty quickly.
And let me speak to the advocacy for this project. This is a lot of money, but it's a very important piece for us to do. The ADA compliance alone is crucial. I see folks that are moving along West Main Street in wheelchairs frequently that have to ride in the street because they can't access the sidewalk without the ramps that are present. We do have a number of folks who utilize the bus in that area, and getting from the bus stop to the other places can be a challenge. So council members, I'd like to make a motion that we approve appropriation ordinance 1749.08 in the amount of $166,830. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I did have just one
Okay.
additional question. We're talking about, how much more expensive this was than originally anticipated. Could you just walk us through how much higher the project is? I know that we've discussed this in the past.
Actually, the cost of the project is not that much more expensive. When you go through and look at the price per square yard and the removal and all that, what we were going to do originally is Public Works was going to do the project. So even though we were already paying in that group, so we're not really counting all that in, and we were just looking at the cost of concrete. So now we're figuring cost of labor, cost of materials, cost of removal, and then that new piece of it, which we would have to pull people off the job. And as I mentioned to you all a couple times over the last few meetings, we just haven't had enough personnel. So they're going to, the company that's going to do this is going to also take care of all the flagging work for safety there.
I think we'd initially
Does that
thought.
answer your question?
I think we'd initially thought that having Public Works help us do this would take $50,000 to $80,000 in labor or in materials.
Roughly.
And so it's about double that once we add in the actual labor and all the additional work that's going to have to be done. I don't think we
We
anticipate.
did add one extra block too.
Right, we do have an extra block. I don't think we anticipated the level of requirement for the ADA piece, but it is important. We knew we were going to have to do ramps,
it's
but
good.
that has stepped up since we last did a project like this.
It's worth it. It's clearly worth it. It's a good project. I'm glad we're taking care of it.
And this will give us a piece to build off of, and as we get more folks in Public Works, we're able to pick up where they're going to leave off and go a block at a time and try to work our way down
And
the
we're
street.
really focusing on, really, we've put a lot of effort. Our West End is looking, it deserves the attention that it's been getting, starting over in Central Business District and working its way over. So this is a very good project to do.
And I think this is a great partnership with our private property owners because we are enhancing the access through their neighborhood. So hopefully that will be another incentive for some to invest in some of the properties adjacent to this as well. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having heard 4 affirmative votes, we can dispense with a second reading if so desired. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion to dispense with a second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about watercraft funding. One of our goals is to have more activity on the New River. We are the New River City, and as such, river rescue need has increased. And so we are looking at appropriation ordinance 1749.09 for the Radford Fire and EMS Department in the amount of $77,995. David, can you talk a little bit about what we're going to do with this and where it's going to be?
Sure. As you all have noticed over the last couple of years, with the diminished rainfall during the summer months, the river has been extremely low. Even after the heavy rain, it came up pretty fast on Sunday and has now dropped back down again. That shallowness of the water and the deeper boats that we have are causing us a little bit of complication. This boat sits right on top of the surface. We're able to go about anywhere we need to go with the increased recreation on the river, with the increased focus with tourism on the river. Gosh, I don't know, there must have been some big fishing tournament this past week, because I've never seen so many boats on the river, so there's a lot of activity there. Plus what we do in mutual aid with our neighbors around us, we just want to make sure that we're able to get out there, and the speed in which this boat can respond, its ability to go in very flat waters. It's also got a fairly large deck, so we're able to do the diving and recovery operations that would be required. So this is a great opportunity for us. It's been something we've been thinking about for a while. This boat has come available. It is a sole source provider. It's not anybody else out there that provides this. It does qualify, since we were able to get our ambulance through CARES money last year and a half ago, whenever it was. We have not had to dip into the aid to locality funding. This, Rodney did check, this does qualify. So we're able to go ahead and pull it from aid to locality and get the boat in probably very soon, and be able to get it in place this summer.
Where are we going to store the boat?
That was my question.
At the fire department.
Fire department. Does it make sense for us to consider putting a structure somewhere closer to the river, whether it be in Riverview or at Bissett, that could be just literally be a storage facility to store the boat in?
Yeah, Rodney's been looking at that a little bit. The thing is, sometimes it depends on where we have to put in. If we're putting in at Dudley's, or if we're putting in down at near, well, we don't usually go in at the Dedmon Center, but if you're in that end of the river, it works pretty good for the places that we go. But if it's further up, or if we're doing mutual aid, the locations, if it's ended up, looks like it's been better to just come out of the fire department with it.
The only thing I worry about, I know we had a couple of calls this last year where people had to respond. They had to go to the fire department first, get the boat, and then go down to the river. I would like to explore further maybe the possibility of putting it in at Riverview, that would at least be somewhat at our head end. While it's not perfect, I think that might cut a few minutes off the travel
Response
time.
time.
That's my biggest concern with having it at the fire department. Certainly I understand that gives you more flexibility in where you go from there, but once we're on the river, we can move pretty fast down the river to get to Dudley's or Dedmon or anywhere
I'll
along
convey
our
that to
place.
Rodney and get them to take a look again.
Okay. I think that makes sense, and, having this additional boat, we could still, because we are going to have a second boat that we're still going to maintain at the fire department
Keep that
regardless.
one. Yeah.
So we would have a boat in both places that I think would give us that piece. The only piece I'm concerned about with that is that use of the river at such a high level. So if you can please check on that, I think that would be helpful. Council members, do we have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance 1749.09 in the amount of $77,995?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having heard 4 affirmative votes, we can dispense with a second reading if so desired. Do we have a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion to dispense with a second reading. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second for appropriation ordinance 1749.09, second reading to be dispensed with. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Jesse, am I going too fast, or am I giving you time to participate?
Yep, nope, you're fine.
Okay. We also are working on our East Main Street project. David, before I get into any of this, can you just give us a little overview of this? I know we've been talking about this. This is going to take us basically from University Drive to Jefferson Street to provide sidewalk transportation for folks, sidewalk pedestrian safety. Can you talk a little bit about the project?
Sure. Some of you may recall this was a project, it's actually several years old, because you have to go through smart scale projects at least 2 or 3 years ahead of time. So we had applied 5 years ago, roughly, for 2 projects, one at McCarg and this one. We got the McCarg project approved, and this one was not. We reapplied again. We did not pursue the McCarg project because of everything that was going on up there with the school construction at the time. So then we reapplied again for this particular project. Sidewalks are narrow. It does not, what piece of sidewalk is there is narrow. And then there's a long gap where you have no sidewalk whatsoever and people are walking in the street. So this gives us our first phase to improve the ADA accessibility, the width of the sidewalk. And it may not be, from what we're seeing from the engineers, it may not be your typical sidewalk where it's right against the curb. It might meander a little bit, which may be pretty cool to see how that works when we start looking at other types of projects. But this includes everything that you had mentioned a while ago. We have to follow all VDOT specs, even though we're doing a locally administered program. Jay will be doing that with our staff. The project, even though locally administered, has to go through the VDOT specs. So everything we've been doing has been on their time and and it takes a while. So it's a couple of years, even though it's a short stretch of sidewalk, and it's not like the West Main project where we can get it done in 60 days, 90 days. This is going to take a couple of years by the time you do design and that kind of thing. So a design is required. We had 3 engineering firms propose. Hurt and Profit was the best proposal. They're very familiar with the project, and they're the ones we recommend move forward. The budget on it is the one that is recommended by, we sent in and was recommended in the original grant, and one that was proposed by VDOT. So once the engineering's done, we'll come back, go over with you all what that engineering looks like, and then ask you to do an appropriation out of it. 20% is our match on it. Everything else is paid by VDOT. So it'll probably span over 2 fiscal years.
So what kind of timeline would we be looking at with the engineering report and then potential action beyond that?
Probably December, January, February, right in that time frame, be winter months.
And then next summer to do the
Probably
project.
looking at getting your commitment and bid it out, and then next summer would be the bidding for the following year. I think construction is in 22. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, they do
Excuse
feel
me,
like there's
23.
some flexibility in moving it in a shorter time span, but they certainly got until 2024 to get this project.
Yeah, we're anxious to move it as close to
So-
time span as we can with so many unknowns
Sure.
on construction. Since this project is smart scale, we know we're going to be looking at possibly some infrastructure, but y'all have got some other things you're looking at for infrastructure, other sidewalks, other projects. We may want to do more in the West Main as that comes along. So this does seem to match up pretty well for smart scale, and VDOT's very anxious about it, and it does fit in with the University Drive Bridge enhancements, which we're rebidding in early August to late August timeframe, and construction on that would be winter, spring of next year.
So with this too, I've mentioned this before when you've shown us the information on this. We are coming up just short by going to Jefferson Street. There's an additional stretch of private property where a number of people traverse that area to go down to. Does it make sense to have a conversation with the engineering firm while we are doing this to talk about that component of it that might be privately done or that could be an add-on to this?
Yes, actually, you all had mentioned it in one of the last 2 meetings. We did say we might want to talk a little bit about that to see, how long it would take to go through smart scale, maybe at least take it down to McAdoo's or a little
Right.
further than that, because we do have so much walking that's down there, and completely clean up that Jefferson Street intersection, and that's a conversation we'll have.
Okay. And that's something, once it has been awarded to the engineers, that we can have that discussion with them to talk about what we might look like? That's not something we have to plan before we award the contract?
No.
Okay. Are there any other questions among council?
Yeah, what we would have them help us do is put in another grant application for smart scale to extend the
Right.
project into a phase 2.
Well, and the other piece, potentially, because we're talking about private property owners through there, is that they may want to work with us to try to expedite that piece, because I know there are some dangerous conditions down there, and that might be something that makes sense.
And if you kind of wondered where is it Skanska, I think is the name of the company, you'll notice their fencing is further,
Yeah.
they're behind the right of way, so there will be no issues with this project as we build down. They won't have to move their fence.
Right.
There won't be any issues with this, construction entrances or anything like that.
Any further questions? All right, council members, we have appropriation ordinance 1749.10 in the amount of $153,000, awarding the contract to the city. Well, do we need to award the contract first? Okay. Do we have a motion to award the contract to Hurt and Profit?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, we have to actually pay for it. So do we have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance 1749.10?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having heard 4 affirmative votes, we can dispense with a second reading. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay.
There's a zero missing
Missing a
on
zero.
that, but it is 153.
Right, 153,000.
And we did the appropriation for the full amount, but it will be reimbursed because VDOT does reimbursement, so the actual project is only $30,600 is our 20%, just so y'all know and the audience knows.
But the appropriation ordinance actually was 153?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. I'm good. I was reading it from my notes, so. Okay. The water treatment plant has received bids for one of our significant chemicals, polyaluminum chloride, used in the treatment process of potable water. Suppliers of this chemical are very limited. We've received 3 bids from Chimera for 22 or 0.221 cents of liquid per pound, and USALCO, I guess, for 2.205 liquid per pound, and control equipment for 0.256 liquid per pound. The city uses 118 tons of this. The cost is $50,000. David, do you want to kind of go through this a little bit, and then we'll talk about what our recommendation is?
Sure. Each year, we do chemical bids of the water treatment plant because this generally is bumping up against the $50,000. We do go ahead and bid this out. As you may recall, there are not very many bidders on this. I think last year we may have only gotten 1 bid, possibly 2 for it. This price from USALCO is pretty close to last year's price. We had total budgeted $48,000, and this is going to be about $50,000, so pretty close to the same amount. It's one of the significant, it's the PAX supply, it's the significant item that we use for prepping, making water for the river potable.
Do these prices usually stay pretty on par across the years?
They took a jump a couple of years ago, and then that's why some of the companies dropped out, and we've got more interest now. So they still look like they're trending pretty level, and that will fix our price throughout the year.
And this covers our more than 118 tons, right?
Yes.
Okay. Council members, the low bid was from USALCO, USALCO, for 0.205 per liquid pound. Is there a motion to award the bid to them for that amount?
So moved.
We have a motion to award the bid. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's talk about right-of-way vacation. David, can you tell us a little bit more about this property owner at 309th Street?
I'd rather not, but no. No, we do have a request for right-of-way vacation. The vacation is located at Harvey Street. If you're going out Harvey from 8th, as you approach 4th, where the street's missing, you'll notice there's a big dip in that. It's been that way forever. It's not likely the street will ever open. Property owners there do want to extend their homes out a little bit, and have asked for the right-of-way vacation. So that kicks in this extensive process that we have. First thing you do is schedule a public hearing. We can accommodate that hearing for the September 13th meeting. The reason we did September 13th, that gives us plenty of time to get the advertising and start getting the prep work underway. Once you have your public hearing, depending on where that goes, then you could appoint your board of viewers and take the next steps in that.
So let's talk about that process a little bit. I think it would actually be helpful prior to the public hearing to have some information for the public to respond to. What is the logic with us doing the board of viewers after the public hearing?
Remind me of process. Does it?
I mean, I know it's our process,
Well-
but I'm just saying, help me think through this
Well,
a
I'm
little
thinking
bit.
about the state.
Is that
see,
code-driven?
You're not required to have a board of viewers.
We're not.
Yeah, so the board of viewers,
It's to help
it's a
inform us as a council.
helpful piece to give to you all. What we do is we'll do an evaluation of the topography. We'll provide you with utility needs that are there, any right-of-way that we need to hold on to, that kind of thing. You know, it gets to be subjective. I know off and on over the years, we've been trying to figure out what to do with some of these right-of-ways. As the right-of-ways come available, it does put property that we're not using back on the tax rolls. And, you know, in this case, we're going to have a couple of houses that are going to be expanded that add the value to the taxes where now it's sitting empty. We will retain, if there is a, any kind of utilities there, we'll retain a right-of-way for those utilities, and that would be part of the recommendation.
But let's think this through, though, and I just want to have this discussion. I don't know if it is dictated by state or by our code or anything like that, when that Board of Viewers might participate and when their report might inform the process. Does it make sense to have more information before we open it up for a public hearing so that the public has something to comment on and respond to, along with whatever presentation is made? Or do we want to keep the process the way it is? The reason I bring that up is as we do that, it feels like the more information we can have before we actually schedule, advertise, and hold a public hearing, the better off we are, and we can have a more complete public hearing at that moment. What do you all think?
The board, I guess, it's chicken and the egg, so I guess it's a matter of figuring that piece of it out. So if you have your Board of Viewers, I know one of the things with Planning Commission and others, we usually like to try to have the public comments ahead of time so that Board of Viewers kind of knows that going into their meeting. And there could be positives made for either side, you know, to have the Board of Viewers go out first, look at it, come back and report everything that they see, everything that they visualize, any conversations they have and that kind of thing. Or you can have the public hearing and then send them out, and that way they've got the advantage of any public comments that come up ahead of time. So,
Can we collect public comment prior to the official public hearing that could be provided to the Board of Viewers and Council before we go into the hearing? Is that follow the law?
I'm not a lawyer.
No, I know.
But I think, yes, I mean, just doing a quick Google search of sort of different localities do things differently, and I think those processes could be switched either way. I don't think.
yeah, because it's not.
I think it would just be if there's a different process you all want to do, probably getting Mike involved in.
Well, what I'd like to do
And
is
you've
actually.
got plenty of time, so you could actually talk about this again.
Let's
next
talk about
time if
this
you'll
at the
set public
August
hearing.
meeting and still look at that. That would be my preference, and let me say why. I would really like, prior to any public hearing that we have, that the awareness be as high as it needs to be, because from my perspective, that should be the time the most serious discussions take place. Certainly, we may have to revisit something, but then that way we have gathered all the information needed for a public hearing to be able to actually have a thorough discussion. What are your all's thoughts?
would just like to make sure that we are in line with any requirements.
Right.
And so
Code.
that's where I think it is important to touch base with Mike and just make sure that we're not doing anything out of step. I think the idea of having more information is certainly helpful, and if we're able to put the board, have them go look first and then report back to us, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't think you lose either way.
But again, and I appreciate that, my thought is to make the public hearing portion the most robust that it can be by providing as much information as possible throughout that process, receiving a report from the Board of Viewers, having a presentation on the property vacation, and then that way anybody who has an interest can participate at that level. Does that make sense? I mean, certainly we need to explore the legality of it, obviously.
Let's get some information from Mike and then touch base in August.
So can we put this on the August 9th agenda? I know Mike won't be here at that
Do we
time,
need to
but
go ahead and?
If you could go ahead.
Send him an email too and just see if he can go ahead and, look up those codes and send them your way.
but we would still have time to schedule the public hearing for September 13th at August 9th.
Specific legal requirements.
The step
for,
phasing.
Right-of-way vacation, it's like, I think it's like 14 days, but no more, they have to be 7 days apart, something, but I think it might work. I just have to look.
Well, I mean, but as far as establishing this public hearing on September 13th, we don't have to formally do that until the August meeting, correct?
Probably for,
From a legal standpoint.
I would hope not. No, but it might just have to be the second meeting in September that the public hearing is then held, depending on the advertising.
Well, if we're able, could we go ahead and set set the public meeting today, and then in the August meeting, we could always appoint the Board of Viewers?
Yeah, I mean, that would
And then
potentially
they
still
would
give us enough
be
time.
able to give us the report for,
And that way we're not crunched for the
September.
public hearings.
I mean, I'm fine with
it
that.
looks-
I just wanted to talk through this process before we get the public hearing scheduled to say, oh, no, since you've already scheduled it, now you can't do something until you've established your process.
Advertise that
Right.
avoid that, so, I mean, we have to advertise it twice
Mm.
anyway, but.
Yeah, they're pretty expensive. It looks like you would have enough time, but if you don't have any objection, go ahead and, if you're okay, go ahead and schedule. You can always cancel it.
Well, you
That
won't
way we can get
advertise it
ready.
before the August 9th meeting, correct?
No, no.
No, probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's 14
Right
days.
at that timeframe, it's just, it's meeting the publishers.
No, I understand that, and I don't want to hold up any particular process that might take place, but at the same time, I would like to have more information at the time we do public hearings, just because I feel like sometimes it's a little cart before the horse, where we're having a discussion about something before we've received all the data, and then at a later meeting, we actually receive data from, whether it be Board of Viewers or additional citizen review or something along that line, and at that point, we're not in a public hearing, and where our comments fall in the meeting, they're at the beginning of the meeting, so if someone wanted to actually comment on it, we don't have that opportunity. So that's my only point. Do we have a motion to establish a public hearing for September 13th, 2021?
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, having said that, I would like to put this on the August 9th agenda. I'd like to talk a little bit about our process for this, and also, again, how we give notice for that. I know that with a similar situation that we were asked to give notice to additional property owners, not just those that were immediately affected by this. So I just want to make sure that we've thought about that a little bit and dotted our i's and crossed our t's.
Quick question, so just for point of clarification, for the August meeting, do you want just right-of-way vacation process as that agenda?
I think we need to talk this through and then review this as well. Yeah. Does that make sense to everybody? I appreciate that. Okay, council, this is one I actually think we need to take a little time to talk about. We received fairly recently some information about opioid litigation. For the last 3 years, almost, 2.5 years, the city has been pursuing recovery of a claim in the opioid litigation process. We have a firm that represents us, Sanford Heisler Sharp LLP. They've advanced a settlement plan in light of the Purdue Pharmacy bankruptcy. We have received that information and received some information from the city. I wish Mike could be here, and I actually talked with him today. Unfortunately, he's in another council meeting, so he is unable to even weigh in by phone. This is a lot to take in. Our deadline is July the 14th to get this taken care of, so literally later this week, we would have to have this all figured out. The value of the money that would likely be coming to Radford is somewhere in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $75,000, and that is our percentage. Of course, we really haven't had an opportunity to discuss how that percentage was established, why Radford is receiving what it's receiving, things along that line. Having said that, this plan has moved rapidly. This is a little different from additional litigation in that this is a bankruptcy and it is sort of a reorganization of the claims against the company. And as such, this is the offer that's being made. Our alternatives, should we consider it, would be to try to move forward with some sort of lawsuit outside that where we might not recover this much. We would likely acquire additional costs in the lawsuit, and that would be a challenge. So, council members, what are your thoughts? Let me go around the horn and see what you're thinking. Naomi?
Well, the bankruptcy changes things substantially. And just to clarify, did you have the opportunity to discuss with Mike? This is just against
Purdue.
one,
It's one.
just against
This is one
Purdue
company.
of multiple defendants.
So this Purdue has filed for bankruptcy, which their bankruptcy is a reorganization of their claims against the company as well as other liabilities. This does not impact other litigation, but there are other negotiations taking place, to my understanding.
The way that I see this, this is so enormously complex that I am concerned that if we do not authorize this vote in this ordinance, then we may find ourselves in a much worse position with fewer opportunity for return. And so while I am not thrilled by the amount of time that we have to digest all of this, to say the least, I think we may be painfully short of options.
Okay. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm feeling the same way. I think this is one of those situations where we really do have to lean heavily on our legal counsel for their advice. And so I'm of the mindset with this deadline that we need to move forward.
Onassis?
Same sentiment. I mean, I think we're in a time crunch, right? So I don't think there's a lot of time to just, pontificate and deliberate over all our options when we really don't have, we have 2 days. So, yeah.
Forrest?
By the Attorney General anyway.
So,
Yeah. Forrest?
Yeah, I agree. From what we have in front of us, this seems to be the wisest option. I'm content with following legal counsel.
So I'm just going to vent for just a second on this. I'm frustrated with the lightning speed with which this resolution was reached and we received the information. Honestly, I've not even had time to review the information that was sent to us. And I'm always very uncomfortable voting on something like this that I at least haven't had a chance to try to review. I don't fully understand the model. I don't know why Radford is getting 0.27%, whereas some communities are getting 8%, 10%. Even some of our neighboring communities that are not significantly larger are getting a significantly larger percentage. I don't understand that. I don't have time to understand that because we literally have been said, this is what our settlement looks like. I know there is a model based on what they interpret the harm to be and things along that line.
Per capita.
But even communities that are smaller than us are receiving higher level percentages. So none of it really makes a whole lot of sense. Having said that, I understand the need for us to move forward because the settlement is expected July 14th, literally 2 days from now. So we don't have a lot of choice. Having said that, what I would recommend is that we put a continuing agenda item of opioid litigation on our agenda to at least have a discussion moving forward. Some of these things I recognize might have to take place in closed session. Most can be in open session since we have announced that we have the litigation. But to get more updates and to try to find out where we are. Again, the Attorney General was involved in this decision. The several different agencies were involved in the decision. I think it puts us in a very difficult position when we're asked to authorize a resolution for the city we haven't even had an opportunity to fully review.
Have we looked at the room model in terms of the allocation, how that is set up?
Literally, briefly flip through it, but it's about 40 pages worth
Okay.
of information
Okay.
to try to understand exactly how they do it, and we received this today.
Onassis, I'll be honest with you. I think that I could read this and
Yeah.
still not understand.
Not understand, okay.
I honestly do
This
feel
is
that.
the attorney talking.
Well,
Exactly.
This is it was created by a PhD, so that's a different level.
Well, and I just want to share this with those folks who might be in attendance and might be watching online. This is a frustration because, certainly we want to move forward. It is revenue that's coming to the city that can help us in our struggles with opioids for our citizens. But as far as understanding it, I can't say with any degree of certainty that I fully understand how we arrived at what we're voting on and why we have made this decision at this point in time. Having said that, it is the cards that have been dealt us right now. So as such, I would like to do a couple of things, and certainly we can address this separately. Number one, I would like to have a continuing agenda item to address this, whether it be just the meetings when Mike's available or every meeting, whatever that makes sense to do. Number two, I think we need to begin to discuss having an item for these monies to be deposited into so that they don't just get lost in the general fund or in general reserves. As this may come in piecemeal, this is going to be particularly challenging to track and how we are receiving and utilizing this money. We're going to need to start having some discussions about that now that money is actually coming in.
It's for specific use. It has to be used specifically for the opioid abatement, all those things. Exactly.
But how that's defined is pretty broad. When we first
Okay.
sat down to have this discussion, that can be in the form of programming that
Marketing
avoids
materials,
people
exactly.
marketing
Yep.
materials, pieces along that line. I don't want this to be much like our COVID response had to be, where we received all this money and there were limitations on how it was spent, but it was like, you have to spend it by X date. I know this doesn't have the same kind of date. I just wanted us to consider establishing a fund for us to put this in, something along that line. Some of this will specifically be set aside that way. If you look at the notes, some of the money that may come from the Commonwealth will be unrestricted. About 15% of that money can be unrestricted. But at that same time, I think we still want to approach it intentionally with how we do this. This is a complex subject. Opioid addiction, opioid response is something that is kind of huge. While this isn't a huge amount, there could be additional monies that we're addressing. And I would hate for us to automatically say, well, let's put it through whatever sources we're currently supporting any kind of drug addiction and just go from there. This might provide an opportunity to receive proposals for programming. It might give us a chance to look at things, for example, like supporting additional drug court or things along that line. It might give us an opportunity to look at different programs that would help avoid opioid addiction. So all of those pieces, I think, are something for us to consider. And I'm bringing this up because this is really the first opportunity we've had to talk about this in quite some time. And I think the speed with which this is happening is a little disturbing, because it's kind of like, okay, you're going to get 50,000 or 70,000 or whatever the total amount is going to be over the next 2 or 3 years, and there could be additional monies from the state. Go. So from my perspective, I think there's 2 things we need to do. Number 1, address this tonight. This is the most immediate thing. Number 2, at our next meeting, I would like to have an opioid discussion and then talk about what a fund might look like. I don't know what other communities are doing as far as creating sort of a lockbox is the wrong word, but a receiving fund for all of these resources that we would then determine how they were spent. Does that make sense?
And that would be appropriate, you just put it in restricted account balance.
Right, but as far as accounting for all these, because of the magnitude, and I think it may end up coming in piecemeal from all the sources potentially, we don't know. This could be 70,000 here, $1 million there, 50,000 there, 100,000 here, so that we can actually do a total accounting and a total discussion of how we're spending this money, if that makes sense. Will you come back to us at the next meeting with a recommendation on what to do from a standpoint? I mean, the formula's in
Yeah,
here.
it's easy. It's pretty basic, yeah. It's pretty basic formula. So it's based upon 3 components. First component is number of persons with opioid use disorder. So even though we may be larger in population than another locality, if we do not have more people who have had opioid use disorder, we'd be ranked lower. The second component is the number of opioid-related overdose deaths. If we, I don't know what that number looks like for Radford. If we're less than like a Pulaski, there'd be higher.
We had to turn in all.
Yep, exactly.
Answer a survey.
And a
on
third
that.
component is the amount of opioid drugs shipped to the locality. I'm assuming that the police department would track that. I don't know how.
Again, a lot of these things are
Yeah.
estimates. That's
Yeah,
the problem
so-
with that. And when we did these estimates, you all weren't part of council. When we had these discussions, it's like, I don't know if this is accurate. I mean, there was no way to really know. It was, we think this might be the case, but we had no idea. So I saw that information in there,
Oh,
but
yeah.
again, it's one of those to say, is it accurate in any way, shape, or form? Part of the problem is, I don't think we had a good handle at that time on what kind of problem we actually had.
Yeah. I mean, how does the city currently track opioid
Well,
usage?
that was all work that was done by our attorneys. I'm confident
Yeah,
that that was
okay.
part, that was.
Yeah.
I think it was an estimate, but remember we had that discussion, it was like, does this actually make sense? I don't know.
As I recall, and Jeff, this was before your time, but you may recall when you were in Culpeper, they sent out a bunch of information. This has been 2 years ago, I guess.
Okay.
So they sent out information. We tracked it through DSS, Police Department, and then like New Valley Community Services, Health Departments, other agencies that were in community action. All of those agencies pulled the information that they had, any kind of records that were out there, and correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. All of that went into the state, but it was a moving,
Right.
it's a point in time. It's what you knew at that particular time. Since then, you've had drug court and there's maybe some other stats that came up. Courts were included in this information, and maybe even the jails, as I recall. But all this went into whatever the pool of information that was being obtained by, at the time, I think we were turning it all into the state of Virginia, and the state of Virginia was turning it into somebody
National
in
survey.
Illinois or somebody that was the
Yeah.
head
It looks
people
like
that were.
the data went,
Yeah.
the data rolled up to the National Survey on Drug Use, which then determined which locality had X amount of opioid usage individuals for the locality. So, and it looks like the weighting is equal in terms of the three components that make up the model. There's some greater weight that's placed towards the number of shipments for that locality. So it looks like it all pulls from a larger database of which we rolled up to, which, I mean, I don't know how the information, information in is only good as
again,
information in. Right?
I think my struggle with it even at the time was this was essentially our best guess
Yeah, yeah.
at what it might be. We didn't necessarily anticipate a final settlement based on whatever percentage that would be. So that's all I'll say about
Yeah,
that.
But at the same time, if you read that factor one, the National Survey on the Drug Usage, they're using the survey themselves to gather that data. So it's not necessarily Mike,
Right.
not really
I think
necessarily
that's-
Mike or a chief or
Sure.
who giving that data to them. So, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's part of the nature
Yeah,
of the very
exactly, sure.
complicated
It is.
settlement process with so many litigants.
Yeah, exactly. You have
I
to
think
use
this is
one
a- I mean, this
one
is a-
determining
this is something
factor
that's-
because you're talking about the entire nation, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, one measurement tool.
I think the bigger issue for me is the speed with which this happened to say, here's how we've determined what your settlement would be, take it or leave it.
Sure.
Pretty
Well,
much
I'm
that's
sure
the
they have lawyers who go through bankruptcy lawyers
Sure.
and say, hey, it's better to squeeze them and get two birds, what was it, bird in the hand? I don't know what that thing is. You know what I'm talking about. So,
Bird in
I
the
don't-
hand, one in the bush.
Yeah, two bushes, I don't know, one of those things.
As such, do we have a motion to approve the recommended settlement put forth by our attorneys in the opioid litigation?
So moved.
We have a
So
motion.
moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We also need to look,
For that, since this is not something that's programmed in your budget, and since we don't know when we'll get the money, and as you said, it's going to be coming in pieces.
Right.
Each time it comes in, we will do an appropriation. Most likely it will go, and I'll give you a formal recommendation, but most likely it would go to those restricted funds for now, and this will most likely come in as a settlement. It'll be clearly marked as it comes in electronically, most likely. We'll put that in. If you start out with $1,000 and, every month you're getting $1,000, then it'll just keep going in there until you decide what you want to use it for, and it'll be restricted, and it carries from year to year to year.
well, and I think, to get a, like you said, recommendation on how we would do the accounting for this, and then what we would be looking at, 'cause it's a little different from anything else we've had.
Yeah.
And
And you may want to
because-
reach out and get a lot of different sources on how you spend it, because that's something that's not going to be
Right.
something I'll have expertise on.
Well, and I think that's part of this
Chief.
process, too.
Chief may have ideas on that, too.
So I think there's a lot of things for us to think about with that, but also, this is only one out of potentially a dozen companies that are involved in this lawsuit, and we'll see where we go with everybody else. Appropriation ordinance 1726.37. The city had several encumbrances that were still outstanding at the end of the year. We need to approve these purchase orders in the amount of $176,875 to carry over the money. It is less than 1% of the total city budget, so we don't have to have a public hearing. We still have to make the approval of the appropriation ordinance so that we can spend money with the electric department, water plant, information technology, Tyler to East Main capital project, and several small general fund departmental items. David, do you want to touch base on any of those?
Those of you who've been doing this for a while know this is probably the lowest amount. We've been getting that number down each and every year. It's been as high as $500,000. But all of these are projects that most of them are associated with the ability to get materials this year, so that's why they're carrying over. But 176 is the lowest amount. There are already purchase orders that are out there. We just have to recognize this for auditing purposes to carry it forward. And I do recommend your approval.
Council members, do we have a motion to approve appropriation ordinance 1726.37 in the amount of $176,875?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Having heard 4 affirmative votes, we can dispense with a second reading if so desired. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to dispense with a second reading on appropriation ordinance 1726.37. Any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. David, what do you have for us tonight?
Just a few things. 4th of July was very successful for something that was put together so fast with the most limited amount of information at the time. Thank you to Grucci, to all of our staff, to all the performers and the people that spoke and worked the ceremonies, to our tourists, visitors, everybody. We didn't have any issues. We had a couple of lightheadedness, but other than that, we didn't have any issues whatsoever. The river was able to stay open and be used for the canoeing and water type sports, and I think it was fun to be had by all. So great event, and we'll head towards even better for next year. So thanks everybody for their involvement with that. Paving has been challenging. It's when you have the two most used streets in Radford being paved, it's probably going to be one of the best jobs we've had. It's very smooth. Rain's got them a little held up. I had hoped that we finish tomorrow. That's still possible, but most likely will be Wednesday. Everything has gone very, very well. We're within budget, so we're pleased with that project, and it will be a nice addition to our community. Of course, as luck would have it, I'm always trying to guess when the first water line break is going to be, or you have an incident and we had a sinkhole open up on 5th Street. So we're trying to get that fixed very rapidly. So while the asphalt's still, very warm and still settling, hopefully we can get that fixed and nobody will really even notice it's there. So great job, Public Works, for
Now, there
getting
was
that
an
project.
issue with that where we don't have paint to do the striping. Is that accurate?
The paint is not available. We've got Marks Up, I think is the name of the company. They are on schedule, should be here in just a couple of weeks, but for the time being, you'll see the little tape strips that will be throughout both Wadsworth and Sundale Drive. So good job on that. Fire and EMS, I'm pleased to announce the building is on the way. We got one, and it's been built to our specs, and it will be here on the 20th. They're going to come in on the 21st and set it up, 21st and 22nd. I'm hoping to get council out there for a tour by the end of that week, and you get to see it before it goes in place. It's a dormitory style, so each of our 8 people that are on the shifts will have their own bedroom, their own bathroom, their own locker that's there, and own furnishings. And they'll take care of cleaning that up each time they leave, and then the next shift will come in behind them, offering the most in privacy, and we think the best for safety and mental health and that kind of thing. So we're excited about getting
How will
that.
they transition between buildings as far as inclement weather, snow? all
There'll
those
be
things?
a cover that's going to be put in. It's going to be pretty close anyway.
Okay.
We did set it back far enough just to allow us that if we're able to get the addition to the building and the improvements to the building done, we won't have to come in and move the building over, and it's out of the way of any kind of conflict. So it should be really nice, and it's going to serve as a great interim facility, whether it's 6 months or whether it's 2 years. It'll meet our needs perfectly. We tried to get the best thing that we could, and they're going to go in the old bunk area. They're going to make some additional office areas, so everybody's got a place to be able to do their reports and things like that. So that's just going to be some temporary. They're all doing that kind of thing, and as you know, we've already got new furnishings and done some improvements to the kitchen living area there, so that piece of it will be done. And we've been working some bay area issues. It's a little tight in there, but we've got a lot of equipment, a lot of modern stuff, and we keep it inside. But very positive project. And Mobile Modular's been great to work with through this.
With some of the challenges we've had in the last couple of years, does it make sense to retain part of the current bunk area as additional bunk space should we need to have more than 8 people there at one time?
I'm glad you mentioned that. In the end of the building, there is some extra space, so we can actually adapt another bedroom, possibly 2, if we need it.
Okay.
So
Because that was my
we are trying to
concern.
think if
We were
go
just
to
sort of
9.
moving things over, but I don't want to lose that space in case we have additional. Because part of the issue that drove this is bringing EMS back to the fire department, and that created some of the crowding issue that we've had. Some of it is a little bit different issue.
We grew very fast, and services have been just phenomenal.
So once this structure is in place, we right now have an agreement for it for a year or 2 years?
It's month to month.
Month to month,
Yep.
but the plan is to then just establish what we're going to do beyond that.
Yeah, we're
and go from
figuring
there.
at least it's going to be a year, because by the time you get the plans in, most likely you're going to do some sort of bond, small bond on the amount of the project. We're looking at every kind of grant that may be out there. It may be, once we figure out what's going on and the release of the infrastructure money that's supposed to come, we'll be able to see if we can use any of that or use any of our ARPA resource recovery, American Recovery money for a portion of the project. So we're still working through all those budget pieces. So right now, this meets the immediate need and should fulfill what we need for at least the next couple
And
of
we have the engineer's report on what was recommended before,
years. On my
correct?
desk, yeah.
So what I'd like to do is actually have a discussion maybe in August or beginning of September. I know we're going to go on
Got
to
it
get
on
this
the
set
work
up.
session.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion about that, council? Because that's kind of a big deal for us. This is solving a problem that we've been working on for at least 2 years, and really, this has been going on for a longer period than that, so.
Well, I just want to say I'm thrilled that, we're doing something, even though it might be a short-term solution, it was one that needed immediate attention. So I'm very glad that, at least in the short term, we have a good alternative until we make that larger umbrella plan.
And where are the funds primarily coming from for the monthly rent on that?
We're using them out of your CARES money.
Yep, okay. What else do you have for us?
Then the last thing I've got, two more things. Our email's been down for just in case the public's having any issues. Everything's back up again, so just resend anything that you may have out there. And then Jenny's going to do a quick update on RAVE.
So before we do that, let's talk about the email for just
Yep.
a second. For those that may be out there, email was down since Thursday afternoon. So anything that's been sent Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or today, if you would resend that so we make sure we don't miss a comment or a concern that's out there, and we'll try to put a notice out about that. I know that we had a notice out about the email being down, but I know some of it's been recovered. I can't say that all of it's been recovered, so I don't know what's out there. Jenny, what do you have for us on RAVE?
Sorry, I'm really loud. So on July 1st, we rolled out our Smart 911 and Rave Alert program, which I think we're going to call the Rave Alert program Alert Radford. So it's not sounding like you're going to a party and getting an alert. But right now we're really just pushing signing up for Smart 911. So if you go to smart911.com, you can fill out that health and safety profile and sign up for your emergency notifications. You can pick if you want them text message, email, phone call, and specifically which ones. We have a general notification category, an emergency notification category, and a weather notification category. So we've had people sign up. WDBJ7 did a good story on it for us. We tested the system. I want to say last week we had a jackknife tractor trailer and sort of just did a, hey, you can't get to 81 via West Main Street right now, and sent out a text message. And I mean, it went through lightning fast, and we were able to send a follow-up with that. And it was very easy from my end to use on the back end, which is excellent. Still some importing and stuff that we need to do on our end and on the back end, but I'm working on building out a city webpage with it where we can even put some community preparedness information and really use it as like an emergency alert platform, but more of an emergency alert preparedness response recovery sort of page too. So.
All right. Thank you very much. So they go to smart911.com to sign up?
Smart911.com to sign up. There's also a link on the front page of our website.
Yep. And we will share all that information on our social media as well. David, thank you. Council members, Naomi.
Nothing for me this evening.
Okay, Forrest, what do you have?
Nothing from me either.
Onassis?
Well, I want to thank the public for a great, and David, and everyone came out for the 4th of July. It was an amazing event. It felt good to see people out and about, I would suggest sunscreen more of next year because I was victim of that. I was like, why are my shoulders peeling so bad? But it's a great event. I love seeing Radford out and about. It just felt good. So hopefully next year will be bigger and better, and I'm looking forward to that. So it's good.
Thank you. Jesse, what do you have for us?
I'm good too.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of things. I want to add my thoughts on the 4th of July. Thank you to everybody who worked so hard on that. Down at the site, I brought Ken up on stage, and Ken Goodyear, our Director of Parks and Recreation, and his team worked tirelessly to make that happen. Our Public Works team worked tirelessly. There were so many people who worked to make that happen. We want to thank everybody. We also want to work to expand how we program that day, because that is so owned by the entire community in the entire region. I think working together, we can have a very representative Radford 4th of July and increase that. Jimmy Fortune did a great job. All the performers did a great job that day, and I think we're excited to move forward with that. I would like us to have that discussion coming up pretty soon to look at how we're doing some of the programming for those big events like that, and really all the activities we have. We have so many wonderful concerts and shows coming up, and I think how we can showcase folks throughout the year is really important for us. Bissett Park has another huge activity coming up. On August the 28th, we will have 2 events that are taking place along the riverfront. Our Renew the New activity will be taking place on that day, and we'll try to get some more information that can be shared with council and the community in our August meetings. But that will be our river cleanup. The New River Watershed folks are working on that, and we should have some more data available for everybody about where to be, when to be, how to sign up, and all of that. Jenny, has anybody reached out to you on Renew the New this year? I will talk with our folks at Regional Commission to get them to give you some information. And we will go from there. But August the 28th? Kim's working with it too? Okay. Fantastic. The second piece is I've got shirts for all of you. Last year, you all were donors to Potter in the Park, even though you didn't know it. I made a donation for each member of our council to Literacy Volunteers of the New River Valley, and you have your Potter in the Park t-shirts. So we were a sponsor. The City of Radford is on here as a sponsor, and we are going to have this event. Again, it will be August the 28th. I hope you all can participate. Literacy Volunteers of the New River Valley is one of our great organizations, helping more people learn to read, be better at their reading in our region, in our city, makes a huge difference. This was a massive event in 2019. It had to be a virtual event in 2020, but we are potentially expecting hundreds of people. They've reserved picnic shelter and I think the gazebo. I'm not sure what all they've gotten reserved for that, but the park will be an incredibly busy park that day. So just to keep everybody in mind, they'll be using part of the Riverway and the walking trails in the park. Please come out and participate and support them. If you can't participate in person, you can go online to Literacy Volunteers website and participate with them as well.
Now, will there be a costume 5K? That's my
It is a
only-
costume 5K.
That's why, okay. Well,
So people can dress in their...
Radford, come out.
People can
Costume
dress
5K.
in their... You
Okay.
can dress as a wizard
Naomi,
or a
Vice-
witch.
Vice
Will there
Mayor.
be butterbeer?
There may be butterbeer. There may be all kinds of things. Actually, if you weren't able to come down in 2019, you really missed an amazing event. There were so many people from across the New River Valley that came out to support this. There were live animals, so there was Magica Zoology that took place. There were all kinds of different displays. It was really a terrific event, and I hope it's something that we can continue to support and have be a big event for that first weekend, that students are back at both Radford and Tech, that people are back after vacation right before we go into Labor Day weekend. So that should be a great event on August the 28th. I did want to mention a couple other things. There has been some conversation about some activities related to Christiansburg Institute recently in our area. We have not necessarily been included. I haven't personally been included in that, but I wanted to express my support for that organization. Christiansburg Institute, for those of you that don't know, was the high school that our African American students in the city of Radford, as well as other localities in the New River Valley, were allowed to attend during segregation. We had Fred Weigel School, which was the kindergarten through 6th grade school, and then 7 through 12, I believe, up until 1965-66 was done at Christiansburg Institute. And so there are many Radford families that have a very close connection with that institute. We have agreed as a council to help support some of their efforts. One of the big efforts they have going on right now is an educational piece for the African American experience in the New River Valley. Primarily that's in Montgomery County, but it will likely involve some of the residents of the city of Radford and definitely some of the family members of the city of Radford. And I fully support helping to tell that story. I think this is a wonderful private organization that is working really hard to help share the experiences of the students and families that participated with Christiansburg Institute. And so please visit their website, visit their social media pages to learn more about what they have going on. This is a really important piece for our community. People look at it and say, well, it's Christiansburg, what does it have to do with Radford? I have learned a lot in recent years about the Radford experience with that institute for so many people and how close they felt. And in fact, the students that participated there, while they loved being Bobcats, they really loved being a member of Christiansburg Institute, and there was an entire culture built around that. We've had several wonderful presentations from the volunteers and staff who are working to help reestablish that institute as a cultural heritage site, and part of their work is beginning to take place right now. So that may be on some folks' radar. Otherwise, Jesse, go ahead.
would it be possible, I know that they did a little presentation for us before, just to keep our community kind of abreast on what they're doing, and again, give us more information on the historical component and relevancy with Radford. Maybe we should invite them back and kind of share their story again.
Absolutely, I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. We'll try to get them on the agenda before too long. One last thing before we break this evening. I mentioned a little bit about wanting to look at our opioid settlement monies and other monies coming in. There is the possibility of infrastructure monies that are going to be coming to Radford. We have done a really great job as a community working to invest in some of our physical infrastructure. We've been working really hard in recent years to address roads and schools and sidewalks and all kinds of things. And there's still more things in the hopper. One of the pieces we're going to talk about is broadband. And the state is working in the special session in the upcoming General Assembly session to work with localities to potentially expand broadband in the communities. So that's an important piece. One piece of this that I would like us to talk about is in looking at unique ways to invest in our citizens, that some of the monies that we have coming in, whether it be through the opioid settlements to deal with some of the struggles that folks are having with that drug, with those drugs, to deal with some of the other issues. One of the pieces that really struck me is that one reason so many people cannot go back to work yet is childcare is still a huge barrier. Pre-K childcare is a huge barrier for an awful lot of families, and I think that's something that we may want to begin to look at as a service that could be provided with some of the monies that are available out there. I can't say how much, I can't say what we're talking about, I don't know for what period of time, but I've had several people approach me to say that they are very aware of folks who want to go back to work, but they cannot find any support to be able to take care of their kids. That they're struggling to try to make it when they do go back to work to actually just pay the bills for the child care they have. So that may be something that really impacts us as a community. It may impact an awful lot of families. Investing in our citizens is probably a theme we're going to need to revisit a lot over the next 6 months, and then definitely as we go into budget season for next year. Certainly there are going to be physical infrastructure things that we need to do to work on our economy, to work on our quality of life in this community. But looking at what some of our citizens need may be a top priority for us as a council moving forward. And I just wanted to bring that up. The opioid piece was a little bit of a driver in my mind today. As we're talking through some of this, there may be some commonalities that make a lot of sense that we can look at. Having said that, I don't have anything else. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second? Motion,
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor, say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
And